Hashem, it's a schus, as always, to give a shir here, Bereshus Harav, in the place of Shiftei Yeshurun, in a shul that's built upon the principle of unifying the various parts of Klal Yisrael together, and all of the Shvatim, in particular Yosef and Yehuda, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. So what we're going to try and talk about is we're going to try and unify, or find the meeting point between two contradictory elements of Yiddishkeit. There's two contradictory elements. There's two elements that make up human experience. One of the ways that they reflect themselves are Galus and Geula. But the two things that compose human life and human experience at every level is something called Chachma and Bina. There's Chachma and Bina. The two things that express themselves from the beginning down to the very end, everything in life is a combination, an interaction, a relationship between Chachma and Bina. Chachma is what we refer to as ayin, bittul. Not thinking about myself, thinking about Hashem's infinite presence in the world.
Sorry,
Sure.
isn't that Keter though?
So we'll get to Keter. So Chachma is the recognition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is present no matter what. Ein od milvado, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And it's the awareness of nothingness. It's the awareness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is ayin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the source of nothingness. He's the source of something that's far beyond comprehension, and everything that exists is directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the mindset of Chachma, the main experience is menucha. Menucha, calmness, bittul, self-nullification. Letting go of the ego, no longer thinking that I'm so much in control of things, no longer thinking that I'm the one responsible to ensure things go a certain way. It's a bittul. It takes letting go of the self-interest has to be put to the side. And in a place of chachma, a person thinks about Hashem, ein on milvado, lahalacha it's shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. The Shem Havaya, Yud, K, Vav, K is meant to awaken within a person the sense of bittul, that Hashem exists and everything else is not as real as Hashem is. That's on the level of Chachma, Menucha, calmness, a relationship directly connected to Hashem. Then, on the other hand, you have Bina. Now, Bina is almost the polar opposite, or at least appears to be the polar opposite of Chachma itself. If Chachma is calmness, then Bina is intensity, Yegia, work, Bechira, choosing, focusing, trying to do better, Tshuva, refinement, over and over. The awareness of being a human being in the world, not the bittul of ayin, but rather the experience of ani. Ayin and ani are the same letters, right? Because they represent two sides of the same thing, like Chachma and Bina. Chachma is ayin, nothingness. Bina is ani, the experience of the self, moving through the world. Chazal say, Bina miklal deta'a. Bina miklal deta'a. If you understand something, then that implies that the moment before you misunderstood it. Because Bina brings with it a question and an answer, a yearning towards something but not yet being there. In Chachma, there's calmness. I'm always there. There's nowhere to go. In Bina, I'm never quite there. There's always somebody else to go. It's this balance between the recognition that all that exists is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and at the same point, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also wants there to be the notion of a neshama in this world that has to do the work. Everybody with me so far? Now, Chachma represents Geula. Chachma, when a person has, look, the Geula klali that we're waiting for, that happens when Hashem decides that it happens. That's Behesa Chadas. Mashiach Yavo Behesa Chadas, take it from Yad Mamish, it comes immediately when Hashem is ready to send Mashiach. But we have the ability to uncover Geula in our minds at any moment, in the secret of Chachma. Chachma is Geula. Chachma is the recognition of Koach Ma, all of my strength, everything I own, everything that I have, everything that I know about, it comes from what? It comes from Hashem. It comes from a place beyond me. It comes from the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is perpetually descending down here. I don't own anything. I'm not possessive of anything. Everything is everything. It's the bittul of Chachma. But then in the place of Bina, when I tap into Chachma, that's Geula. Karva el nafshi giyala. I can choose to bring Geula in my life right now. If I'm operating in a Chachma mindset, if I choose to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, according to the Yid Gimel Ikrei Emunah, according to everything I know, Hashem, you are as much here right now as you were by Matan Torah. or as you were in Binyan Beis HaMikdash. And that on the level of Chachma, Chachma Bagoyim Ta'amin. There's Chachma everywhere. Chachma is everything. Nothing is outside of Chachma. The bittul of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light is anywhere and everywhere, and therefore, wherever I let it in, I'm in a state of Geula. Karve el nafshi giyala. Bina is Galus. Bina is the absence of Beis HaMikdash. Bina is Yegia. Bina is the sense I'm late for a very important date. I'm too early, I'm too late, I'm not quite right at this moment yet. I'm trying, I'm struggling, I'm pushing. There's concern, there's constriction, there's vessels. And so there's a balance in our life of a Geula perspective, which is Ayin, which is Hashem is here right now. And there's the perspective of Ani, which is that I am here right now and I have to draw Hashem into my life, but I don't identify reality with Hashem. On Chachma, everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything exists within Eino and Milvado. On Bina, yes, Avada Hashem exists, but He created me as a separate thing that now has to try and figure out how to let Hashem into my life again. And the goal, everything in reality is a machlokas between these two mindsets, between Chachma and Bina. The apparent machlokas between Chachma and Bina is the machlokas between Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef, between the question of letting Hashem drive the car at every second, or versus thinking that maybe I play some role in this. And in truth, it's not a machlokas because they're actually in disagreement with one another. But as you pointed out at the beginning, they're in machlokas because they both represent two sides of a singular coin that can only be revealed when both of them have their rightful place in our lives. Meaning to say, Chachma and Bina, it's not Chachma or Bina. It's always Chachma and Bina. Once we're aware of that, then we can learn how to tolerate the paradox of Chachma and Bina, of Ani and Ayin, of being a self and being aware that all that exists is HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the same point. Why? Because in truth, both reveal something called Keser. Both reveal something called the crown of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the unity of Chachma and Bina. The impossible balance of Ani v'Ayin b'vasachas. Self and nothingness operating at once. The recognition that Hashem, you are in control of everything, always were, always is, always will be. But at the same point, there's room for me as a human being to also try and figure out how to draw Hashem into my life and to figure out how I can bring Mashiach. Everybody with me so far? Yesh Ma'ayin. Now, very often and understandably, we want Geula, we want Mashiach now, right? We want Mashiach now, we don't want to wait. But at the same point, if we only run towards Chachma, if we run towards that place where all that exists is HaKadosh Baruch Hu and all we want is the goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and all we want to see is Eino and Mavado Mamish, we lose out on the other side of experience, which is the Ani. We generally think because Galus is so terrible, because reality is so difficult, because this, that, or the other thing, so we want to run away from Bina, and we want to run into Chachma. We want to escape this world, and we want to run into Shamayim. The Arizal points out, and again, the entirety of the Torah can be understood in this lens, but the Arizal points out that the weekday is Bina, and Shabbos is Chachma. That when a person is davening, the intention on whatever level we have when we connect ourselves to the tzaddikim is that when I'm davening during the week, in the 6 days of the week, I am trying to attach myself to the moichin of Bina. I'm trying to learn how to be a self in the world, a sense of Ani, and to refine what it means to be a human being. The transition point from the 6 days of the week into Shabbos is the transition from Bina into Chachma. Where now on Shabbos I realize that all of my work is done, whether I believe it or not. Ki'ilu kol melachtacha asuya. There's no more work for me to be doing. Everything is what it is, and that's the Or of Shabbos. So the 6 days of the week are Bina, the self. Shabbos is Chachma, the recognition that all that exists is Hashem. So yes, obviously we want to live in Shabbos all the time. We want to live, we're ready for Shabbos. We're ready for Chachma, we're ready for Bittul. We're ready for Hashem to reveal Einon Mavado. And Avada, that is always the goal. The goal is to be Megala Ayin. The goal is to be Megala Ein Oid Milvado, Efes Sulaso, that there is nothing that exists other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That before, during, after, in the concealment, within the concealment itself, beyond the concealment, every ounce of it, without any possibility of any singular drop, no matter how tiny, being outside of Hashem's unity, everything declares the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Einon Mavado. That is the Tachlis. The Tachlis is Bittul, the Tachlis is Va'anachnu Ma. The recognition that Hashem, no matter how high I go on the ladder of knowing you, I will always come to realize that I don't know you at all. Kedushasi l'mala mikdushaseichem. You are infinite, I am finite, I can never grasp you. Bittul. Bittul. That's avada the Tachlis. But in order to reach that Tachlis properly of Geula, we don't get rid of Bina. We don't say enough with you 6 days of the week, enough with you Galus, enough with you Yegia, enough with you Bechira, enough with you Avoida. We say that we're going to take the Avoida of Bina and all of the separation that comes along with it and all of the concealment, and we're going to drag it into Shabbos itself, so that now we're not just experiencing Ayin itself, which is Chachma, which is plain and simple unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but now we also somehow, some way have this miraculous engine of intensity that has been drawn into Bittul, which allows me to learn more levels of Bittul in each and every moment, to experience Shabbos anew in each and every moment. Because Chachma alone, if I live in Shabbos alone, if I live in only Geula, so there's a klal gadol that the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh taught us, and it's drawn from the Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim, which is Tainug Tamidi Eino Ta'anug. Ta'anug Tamidi Eino Ta'anug. Perpetual pleasure is no longer pleasurable. Because the self-same nature of it is the opposite of what the human experience is. Self-sameness, equality of all levels, pure and simple unity, yes, that's avada what we want at this point, it's avada what we need, but what we would lose is the experience of becoming aware of it from within a place of concealment, which is the entire joy and wonder and surprise and emunah and simcha and laughter of it all. Without the preceding moment of concealment, without the bina that precedes the chachma, chachma grows stale, not because Hashem's infinitude grows any less, but Hashem's infinitude never grows any less. It's always there. It doesn't need us. Hashem doesn't need us. Hashem didn't need there to be separation. That Tzimtzum is the biggest miracle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu expressed.
So even the other Rishon Kodesh Achet had that level of bina?
Avada.
So
Avada.
So, and even
no human being...
Even after the Kesser was supposed to come down on Erev Shabbos, that's the human experience.
The human experience is to be perpetually deficient, not because we are not good enough to be whole, but because we're not God. And Mamela, there's always going to be an element of bina that we need to include within Chachma, because, again, everyone with me? Tainug Tamidi Eino Tainug, the revelation of Chachma, after a while, there's no yesh, there's no ani to bring it about even more, to make it a chiddush. Chiddush is what we want. Chadvusa deshmaisa. Mashiach Tzidkenu is a chiddush. Chadesh yameinu kikadem. Ut chadesh panei ha'adama. A recreation of creation itself. A reorientation. A recreation at every moment. That's what Mashiach Moichen is. And that creativity, that emergence from one state into another, is the tenua, is the movement of chiddush and his chadshus hatainug. Pure and simple pleasure of oneness grows tiring because it lacks the novelty that comes about by being amazed by the fact that Hashem is found even here. It's not a surprise to find Hashem over there in Shemayim. The bigger surprise is to find myself on the land and to reveal over and over that Hashem is here also, Hashem is here also, Hashem is here also. And so, it's Ratzav V'Shov B'Vasachas. B'Vasachas. It's the unity of both together at the same time. The Tachlis is Bittul, the Tachlis is Ayin. But what we want to do is we want to draw the Kalim of Ani into the world of Ayin, draw the Bina, draw the separation, draw the Gullus, draw the 6 days of the week into Shabbos, so that all of their symptoms are nullified in the light of Shabbos. The symptomology of Bina is no longer going to be affecting us. It's only the experience of Bina, which is change and renewal, not the ups and the downs and the hopelessness and the hope and the fear and the calmness. That's the symptomology of Gullus. But the mechanism of that experience, which is the ever-changing nature of the neshama in its perpetual ascent upwards and then realizing, oh my gosh, I haven't even reached anything and I have to start again, that is a fundamentally necessary vessel that must be dragged into Geula. So yes, we want to get rid of the symptoms of exile and bina, but we can never forget the fundamental significance of ani itself, which is the fact that I exist. And to exist, by definition, is to experience galus and forgetfulness. And our job is not to hate galus, not to hate the ani, but rather to drag it into the bittul of chachma to reveal the ani v'ayin bevasachas. So instead of having a tainug tamidi she'eno tainug, what you now have is Tnuas ha'eschadshus betoich tainug hatmidi. Tnuas ha'eschadshus betoich tainug hatmidi. Tnuas ha'eschadshus is bina, the possibility of change, of realizing that what I thought I knew, I come to terms with not knowing. What I thought was perfect, I come to terms with accepting is imperfect. Not by way of sadness or I'm not good enough, but by way of the infinity of it all. Kedushasi l'malam kedushaseichem, the biggest kfira imaginable at any point from now until the end of history as HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees it, is to ever feel that we have grasped HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his entirety. There is no bigger kfira than feeling that we have grasped the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in its entirety. Because what that would imply is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is operating in the same wavelength of our operation. We have to drag the awareness of not knowing, trying to know, coming to not know, trying to know, coming to not know, trying to know, coming to not know, all within that secret, simple place of knowing without any doubt whatsoever that all there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I have the Tnuas HaEschadshus, I have the benefit of being a Baal Tshuva, of the climbing up and down within the light of being a tzaddik. That's what it means that b'makom shebalei tshuva omdim ein tzadikim gemurim yecholim lamod. A tzaddik gamor exists by chachma alone. There are certain tzaddikim who only want to live in chachma, who don't want exile, who don't know kalim, who don't know what it means to struggle. And then there's the Baal Tshuva who only knows struggle, who only knows the worlds of bina and separation and progress. But there's the secret that in the place that the pure tzaddik on the level of chachma stands, that's lower than the Baal Tshuva, because the Baal Tshuva knows the secret of movement, perpetual movement, and running upwards with ferocity, with the intensity of flames rather than the calmness of water. But then there's the Iker Yichud, which is the tzaddik who is a Baal Tshuva, and the Baal Tshuva who's a tzaddik, who has the ability to do both at the same time. Zohar HaKadosh says, and the Mittler Rebbe of Lubavitch has a beautiful explanation on this, Mashiach asva la'asya tzadikaya b'tiyufta. Mashiach comes to help the tzaddikim do tshuva, to help the tzaddikim learn the secret of tshuva. What does it mean? Tzaddikim don't need to do tshuva. It means that there's the tzaddik on the level of Keser who's doing both at the same time. They're above and below at the same time. Moshe Rabbeinu, above and below. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Moshe Rabbeinu was able to understand the inequity of man and the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you try and blame these people for even a second, I'm calling foul. The one thing that Moshe Rabbeinu was ready to stand up to was Hashem judging the Jewish people unfavorably. Because Moshe Rabbeinu said, are you kidding me? Moshe says, Hashem, are you kidding me? You want to go to court on this? I'm going to win. I have the best lawyer. I have myself. I have Moshe Rabbeinu. I have Nishmas Yisrael. You want an analogy for what they're like? They're like a young child with money placed around their neck, sent in front of the brothel. Hashem, you cannot blame them. That's the koyach of Moshe, the tzaddik who has the aura of being a tzaddik, of talking to Hashem, and the tzaddik who's the Baal Tshuva, which is why the Zohar HaKadosh refers to Moshe Rabbeinu as Marid de Tiyufta, master of tshuva, because he knows how to go all the way down into Gehenna itself to understand the Pnimius Halev of Nishmas Yisrael and realize how at that place also it's Einon Muvado.
This is always a conundrum for me, exactly what you're speaking about over here, is because the implication then is that Ki'ilu, Ki'ilu Hashem just didn't chap what Moshe Rabbeinu chap, which just doesn't make any sense.
So that's the question. Everyone hears the question? How could it be that Moshe Rabbeinu has to teach Hashem about the fact that no, that which remains below down there also belongs by you? So Rav Yitzchak Shlita has been, everything I'm saying is from Rav Yitzchak. I mean, in my humble understanding. But there's a medrash in Yosefus, or a statement in Yosefus that the Rebbe has been quoting, that you come and ask the king, who's in charge? Well, you come and ask everybody who's in charge. They're going to say the king's in charge. You come and ask the king who's in charge, he's going to say the Malka's in charge. You come and ask the Malka who's in charge, they're going to say the children are in charge. Everybody knows, even the children know. Maybe the children don't know. That's the question, right? Nar Yisrael, the children forget who's really in charge. Avada, the king's in charge, but it's because the king loves the Jewish people so much that he wants them to play around as if they have something that they're actually adding to Shemayim. Hashem places us on top of his shoulders, Kavyachol, the Zidichaver, the Heilige Zidichaver, the Aterasi of Zidichav, the Sar HaZohar. He writes as follows, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka. Yisa Hashem panav elecha. Kavyachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu will lift his eyes up to Klal Yisrael, like the father who lifts his eyes up to his child who's on their shoulders, allowing the child to, for a moment, believe that they're the one who's higher than the father themselves. But where does that koyach come from? That koyach comes from the profound koyach of the father. And why does Hashem love Nishmas Yisrael so much? That we don't know. We just know he does. That's the biggest secret of all things. The biggest secret of all things is Yismach Hashem b'ma'asav, that Hashem wants us to do what we need to do and what we've been doing. There's no there's no explanation. Why Hashem chose Nishmas Yisrael? That's what he did. Kacha yasalish Hasher melech hafetz bikaro. Keser kol aksarim. Hashem chose the Yidden.
Why we chose Yidden over other entities?
Why?
Isn't that because of Teva Meitiv?
There's infinite discussions about every element of it, but sof davar hakol nishma. After everything is said and done, all of the explanations from the Rambam to the Ari and everybody in between, it's ein tam l'ratzon. Ein tam l'ratzon. There's no reason for HaKadosh Baruch Hu choosing Nishmas Yisrael. But once he did, it's our responsibility to uncover that innermost das of the fact that Hashem wants us to bring about the Geula. Hashem could bring the Geula before. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was the only one who understood the joke of Geula, which is that Klal Yisrael are so far from Geula. So incredibly far from Geula. The moichin of Geula are completely removed from the mindset of the Jewish people. They've forgotten Geula. Forgotten it completely. They're miyayish on Geula. It's after the Shoah. If Geula didn't come then, when's Geula going to come? There was a yeyish on Geula. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe, like a good shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like a Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation, says, I am going to be meshugan enough to teach the people about Mashiach. I'm going to leave them demanding Mashiach. I'm going to open up the moichin of Mashiach for the generation. And he had those shoulders. He had the broad enough shoulders to bring out that hitznoitzitzutz of a ratzon to geula, of redeeming the notion of redemption. Before we can experience redemption, there has to be the redemption of the possibility of redemption. But now, in this place, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be the ones who draw down redemption. He wants us to be the ones who demand Ad Masai. He wants us to be the ones who say, from the perspective of Bina and the separation, I'm coming to show you, Hashem, it can't go any lower. There's nowhere lower for it to go, Hashem. This is the dir b'tachtonim. Everybody with me?
So it sounds like it wasn't that they taught Hashem, Moshe taught Hashem. He was looking forward to Moshe.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Zok the Zohar HaKadosh, the scariest Zohar HaKadosh, the scariest pasuk. Bo el paro ki hani ichpadati es libo ve'es lev avadav leman shisi oisaisai bekirbo. Hinani machar avi lechem arbe begvulech. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in Torah 64 bases everything, the secret of existence and Simsum and everything we're talking about, on this pasuk. Because the Zohar HaKadosh says, Bo el paro. So Torah 64 in Likutei Moharan. Bo el paro, says the Zohar HaKadosh, come forth to Paro. Lech el paro mi ba'ilei. It should be that Hashem is telling Moshe from outside of Paro's palace, go towards Paro. Why is Hashem beckoning Moshe forward into the palace of Paro? The implication is that Hashem is in the palace of Paro. And Zak the Zohar HaKadosh, this is the secret. And Moshe havedachel minei. Moshe was terrified of this place. Why? Because Paro is the Tanin Hagadol, Haroi Beitz B'toch HaYeor. The secret, as Rav Tzadok says, of how there could be concealment in a world where all there is revelation, how there could be tzimtzum. And what Hashem is telling Moshe is that come into the concealment because I'm there. I'm there. So Hashem, the shlichus given to Moshe Rabbeinu and to every Yid is always one thing, to reveal Hashem where we thought that He wasn't. That's our bechira, to reveal Hashem where we thought that He wasn't. Because every other thing other than that place is Hashem. So in the place that we don't think Hashem is, that's our shlichus in life, to be megalazayin. And so Hashem, that was the tachlis habriya, for Moshe Rabbeinu to bring out the yichud in the dir b'tachtonim mamish. And so that's why Hashem, but the game is rigged because Boel Paro. The only reason you're able to do this, Moshe Rabbeinu, is because I'm with you. And as we're going to say in Elul, the deepest secret of Elul, L'cha amar libi bikshu panai es panecha Hashem avakesh. L'cha b'shlichusecha, says Rashi HaKadosh. His yard said it is, or yet was, or is. B'shlichusecha, meaning to say, Hashem, my heart that is crying out to you is actually just a shliach of you telling it to cry out to you. That my best motivation to come closer to you, Ribono Shel Olam, from within Bina, is also just rooted in your tremendous chachma. And that even the Bechira Latov that I have, and the Tzipiyah Yeshua, it comes directly from you, Ribono Shel Olam. Everything comes from you. My crying out to you comes from you. In that way, we can look at the kinos of Tisha B'Av differently. I'm afraid to talk about the kinos of Tisha B'Av here because this is the Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, this base medrash, and Rav Heber Shlita's teachings on the kinos are chad b'minam. But Rabbi Nachman has a teaching about kinos. Rabbi Nachman says that exile, bina, is kinos. It's mechusar tikkun. It's devoid of closure. There's no tikkun there. It's a chisaron. Each person is shrying and crying about what they don't have, or what they want, or what they had and lost, or what they don't feel that they have yet, or this, that, or the other thing. Every voice, Eicha Yashva Badad, every voice emerges from a sense of deficiency. As Rabbi Nachman describes in his Heilige masterpiece, the Sheva HaBatlarim, the deaf beggar who appears deaf, he comes back on the third day of the Chasana. I don't know if everyone's holding in this Maisa, but everyone should be holding in this Maisa. And he says, you thought I was deaf? You thought I was deaf? I'm not deaf. I'm sorry, it's not the third day, it's the second day. He says, you thought I was deaf? I'm not deaf. It's just that every voice in this world comes from a place of chisaron. All singing, all expression, all gratitude, it is all rooted in a deficiency. Even when I'm praising Hashem, even the people who are praising Hashem come about from a place of deficiency. Something was missing, and that something needed to be refilled. And he says, I don't want to hear that anymore. I want to hear the voice of Mashiach. And therefore, I've deafened myself to those voices. But what we see is that the nature of voice in this world is rooted in chisaron. The world is mechusar tikkun. Because Hashem chose the Jewish people to be mashlim tikkun, to be metaken it, Mashiach tzidkenu. Adam, David, Mashiach. What started with Adam, what goes through the expression of David. Why is it David? If Adam is Adam and Moshe and Mashiach is Mashiach, because each of us are David. Just like each of us are Adam and just like each of us are Mashiach as well. Each person's story is that process of mechusar tikkun. Moshe also, Adam, Moshe Mashiach. But we're all mechusar tikkun. And that's where kinos come from. Rabbi Nachman says kinos come from the fact that things are not mushlam. Something is missing in a person's life. And Rabbi Nachman says it's kedai to look at Rabbi Nachman Sichos Haran Os Ayin Zayin, where Rabbi Nachman there describes fundamentally how every milchama on every level of existence whatsoever is also taking place within a person's home, and also taking place within a person's heart, and also taking place within the person themselves, which is why when you go out alone into the forest, you can become a meshugana. Why? Because you have 70 nations in you fighting. And so all of the chisaron that we see in the world, all of the tzaddikim tell us, reflect on the chisaron within you and how it relates to the chisaron with the Shekhinah. Not what's wrong with me. Not what have I done wrong. What can I do more? Avada. Always being Mosef B'Kedusha. But being mitmoded with the chisaron is understanding my own most particular point of Churban Beis HaMikdash. What is missing in my life because I have not entered into Beis HaMikdash? What is missing in the life of Klal Yisrael because I have not entered into Beis HaMikdash? Each person with their chisaron. And that's where kinos come from. And as a result of kinos, we also find ourselves in a state of teku, says Rabbi Nachman. Teku, which is the osios of kinos and tikkun, except it's missing a nun. Because what's teku? Tishbi yavo v'yataritz kushas v'abayos. A person lives in a world with questions, not knowing. A person who only lives in the world of bina without yet grasping the chachma. So it's scary there. It's hard there. It feels like there's infinite questions without any answer whatsoever. As my Saba Schusa Ganalenu said, I think it was in the name of the Chafetz Chaim after coming out of Auschwitz, he said that without emunah there are no answers. With emunah there are no questions. And it wasn't that all the questions are answered. He says there's just infinite questions to ask. There's too many questions to ask. There's no reason in asking the questions. Like the Heilige Rav Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha. Rav Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha, the Heilige Rav Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha, when the tzaddikim would say Manishtana, so the Heilige Rav Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha would put his head down, And he lifted up his head, and his face was inflamed in tears. And he says, Ribbon Shleilim, 5 questions you want me to ask? 4 questions you want me to ask? I have infinite questions. I have so many questions. There's not enough time for all my questions. On you, on Hanhaga, on Metzius. But if you give me the gift of Emunah, then I don't have to take everybody's time and ask them, because I don't need an answer for them. And so each and every person comes with their teku, with their kinos, and the avodah is to be mahapiched into a tikkun. To realize that every ounce of bina, every ounce of struggle, every ounce of exile, every ounce of concealment, every ounce of hastara, v'hastara b'toich hastara, sheb'toich hastara, sheb'toich hastara, every moment of it is there to be transformed into a vessel that gets brought into unity, and it becomes the fuel that creates the radical revelation that Hashem is here, even there, even there, even there, even there. Every moment where I didn't think He was there, He's there. Thereby growing and beautifying the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chaver with me? Beautifying. Bringing Golus into Geula. Lubavitch Rebbe would say, and this is not only Lubavitch Rebbe's Torah, this is a Torah from Slonim, this is a Torah from the Baal Shem Tov. It's everybody's Torah, and because it's everyone's Torah, it's Lubavitch Rebbe's Torah also. That Geula, it's really the Maharal in Netzach Yisrael, that Geula and Goyle are the same osios. The only difference is that the Aleph is missing. That Goyle, which is a state of, being in exile, being an accidental murderer, being chased, needing an Ir Miklat, which is ultimately the secret of Geula, an Ir Miklat, place of safety, that place of drawing Bina into Chachma. But Goyle is just that the Aleph is not present. But if I can draw down the Aleph and reveal that the Aleph is there always already, so then what I do is I transform Goyle into Geula itself. Now that's chas v'shalom a very hard thing to say to a person who's living in Chutz La'aretz, but when you're living in Eretz Yisrael already, what? The Aleph represents Alufo Shel Olam. What's the Aleph that we're revealing to ourselves? The Aleph that we're revealing to ourselves is the innermost point of the Beis in Bereshis. The Heilige Originer and the Heilige Vilna Gaon both said that the entirety of the Torah can be composed and comprised and understood in the light of the tiny dot in the heart of the Beis. And what the Rebbe has been revealing from previous Svarim is that tiny dot in the heart of the Beis is an Aleph. It's the Torah of Aleph. Like the Lubavitch Rebbe would say, if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. Because any time a Yid is teaching any Torah, it doesn't just mean teach the little bit that you know. Whatever you're teaching Aleph. The Aleph of Anoichi Hashem Elokecha that the Heilige Rimon ever said is the Gantz totality of revelation at Matan Torah, the Aleph. That's all we heard, the beginning of the Aleph. That Aleph is also the secret of Amar Oyef Erdof Asik Achalek. The Heilige Baal Shem Tov says as follows. He says that what happens when Klal Yisrael is chased by enemies and Klal Yisrael find themselves Bein HaMitzarim, and they find themselves, even after all of the revelation of the Nisan, they find themselves entering into the sea, and they find themselves in a place of dire straits. To the left, to the right, there's enemies. So what happens? We go in, and then we find ourselves losing faith again. This is the story of the Jewish people. Even though we know that Bina and Chachma are fundamentally connected, when we find ourselves in Bina for even a moment, unaware of the Chachma there, we start screaming to Moshe. We start screaming again for more of the teaching of the Aleph. And at that point, what we sing out is Amar Oyef Erdof Asik Achalek. That's the point in the story where we're really, really, really being chased. Amar Oyev Erdof Asig Achalek. The enemy has a voice, which is already a chiddush that the enemy has a voice. Amar Oyev. It's not just an enemy, it's an enemy with a voice. Erdof, I will chase them. The suspended process of the chase. Asig, I will grasp them. Achalek, I will destroy. And in that place, what the Baal Shem Tov reveals is that if you look at those words, each and every one of those words start with the Os Aleph. There are 5 Alfin there. And what are those 5 Alfin? Those 5 Alfin are in truth the 5 times that it says Or in Maisa Bereshis. Hashem planted 5 lights in reality. Hashem planted an Os Hey in reality. Hashem planted the 5 books of Moshe. Hashem planted the 5 Chalakim of the Neshama. Hashem planted Nishmas Yisrael, which is 5, into Mitzias. 5 Lashonos of Gula, everything is 5. The Kutzah Shel Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, everything is 5. Hashem planted a 5-ness in reality. And when we can uncover that Or Ki Tov, that hidden light that exists in reality, no matter what the circumstance is, So what we reveal is alufo shel olam. We reveal alufo shel olam wherever we find ourselves, specifically when the enemy is chasing a person. That's where the koach to be megala alufo shel olam is even more intense and more powerful. And so the Heliga Kamarna, that when a person realizes that the alufa shel olam is nimsa b'chol mine hastara, ad miyad nispardu kol palayavan. Immediately. It's not a past present thing. It's immediate. Tekef umiyad mamish. There's no process necessary because it's always already only been HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, it's just about recognizing it. I don't have to do anything. I'm already in a state of Chachma. All of the movement of Bina, all of Chol is going to be revealed to have been the Elef Yoimin de Chol, this long week that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, this long week. And it's just going to be revealed to have been subsumed by the general principle of Chachma and the Yud Chachma Kaduma and the Seichel Shebechol Davar. And we're going to see how every ounce of struggle is mamtik the din. When I realize Hashem is there, I'm mamtik the din. And those 5 alfin, the Arizal says there's 5 dinim. There's 5 dinim. Just like there's 5 ways of receiving reality in the proper way, so too in the principle of holiness, it could always be revealed to be in an unholy way. The Sitra Achra is just the other side of things that fills out the picture to reveal that above and below the system, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is unified. There's no above the system, Hashem is unified, and then below the system, you lose it. The Sitra Achra, the language of Sitra Achra is that it's the other side, meaning to say that yes, there's a fundamental process of Hachna, Havdalah, Amtaka, refinement that needs to take place, and fasting. But ultimately, it's just the hither side of reality that's going to be revealed to also speak out HaKadosh Baruch Hu's glory, which is what we sing about on Kabbalah Shabbos, that the Goyim themselves are going to be the ones recognizing the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if I'm grasping the 5 or, then I'm in or. But if I'm not, then I'm in din. And there's 5 dinim. And there's the chamesha gvuros hachazakos. And 5 times din is shach dinim and par dinim and all of the difficulty, bless you, that a person finds themselves in this world. But when you take an aleph and you add it to din, you find adnus. You find HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, aleph daled nun yud. And so when you draw the 5 olives down to the 5 times din, what you've done is you transformed all of the concealment and the Bein HaMitzarim into 5 expressions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, b'tikifus. The name that HaKadosh Baruch Hu and an Ish Milchama and the Koyach and the Din and the Dina de Malchus Adina, and that the king is Poritz Geder and he's Yotzei Milchama and he has a Kesser of Nitzachon on his head, and the secret of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And ultimately, again, we didn't really get anywhere, but instead of trying to get rid of Gullus, we have to get rid of the symptoms, every last symptom of Gullus. And again, the Rebbe has said you can give Torah on every single aspect of existence, chutz me davar echad, which is the suffering of another person. There's no Torah to be given on that. And so when it comes to Geula, when it comes to the Tekef Umiyadkeit and the undoing of every negative symptom of Bina, that's Tekef Umiyad, and that's Kahalacha, and that's all of the ways that it has to happen. But once we abstract the innermost kernel of Gullus and we realize, wait a second, Hashem, Gullus is not separate from you, it's part of you. Exile is not separate from you, Tzimtzum is not separate from you, it's a revelation of you. And we drag that into redemption itself, and now we're armed with the vessels of what we experienced in Gullus, and we draw it into Geula so that we can benefit from both at the same time. Ani v'ayin b'vasachas. Not to just get stuck in the ayin where it becomes boring, but to understand that the yearning and the longing and the hope that was cultivated in a time of exile must be preserved in order to allow us to function properly in redemption. That I need to always remember that no matter how well it might be going, there's always going to be another stage of transition that I have to start from the bottom again. Because the ceiling, no matter how high it is still the floor of the level above it. And the midos, the Balatanya had a beautiful saying that Kein Bakodesh Chazi Sicha Liros Uscha Uchveidecha, on that pasuk in Tehillim, that it's halavai Rebbeinu Shalom, halavai shebizman habeis hamikdash kayim ezke lahasigo ischa k'moshe hasagti ischa bizman hagalus. That it should only be Rebbeinu Shalom that I should be meritorious to grasp you in the time of redemption as I merited to grasp you in the time of exile. We have Rav Yaakov Moshe Chalap who says that on a certain level the yearning towards redemption is even stronger than redemption itself. How could it be? Because the yearning that is cultivated in a time of exile, the hope that is cultivated in a time of exile, the urgency, the need, the absolute urgency, the impossibility of surviving for even 1 second without it, that's Sipia Yeshua, that reveals a more potent expression than believing simply in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The yearning must be provided, the yearning must be dragged in. And that's what we have. What we have now in Kinos is Teshuka and Kivoy. Kivoy. Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. That's what we need to take from exile and bring into redemption. The Rebbe spoke on Motzei Shabbos, and I heard the Mashkiach, Rav Moshe Wolfson, Schus Yogen Aleinu, that Beit Shemesh is a special thing. Why is Beit Shemesh a special thing? Rav Moshe Wolfson, I heard this from Rav Reichman, and he said to be mefarsim the story. It's a real story. It's Davar Pella. I know that Rabbi Smiles was there also, so we have two Eidim L'Davar. That Rav Moshe Wolfson was in Shiloh. There was like a program, a YU program, an original YU program in Shiloh before NCSY Kollel. And Rav Soloveitchik had sent the Rav there, had sent a Talmud there to discern what the quality of Kedusha Shiloh was, like whether the Kedusha of the Mishkan was still there or not. And Rav Moshe Wolfson came out and met the Chevra. He came with his son-in-law, Rav Matel Zilber, also to like an early YU program. And after davening in Shiloh, he wanted to come to Beit Shemesh. Why did the Mashkiach want to come to Beit Shemesh? The Mashkiach wanted to come to Beit Shemesh because he had a child who had been many, many years without a child. I think it was something like 17 or 20 years. And he said he wanted to go to Kever Shimshon to daven. He wanted to go to Kever Shimshon to daven for his child. And punkt, from the time that they davened by Kever Shimshon, it was an immediate geula, and it was an immediate reflection of the Kiyum Hanes, and his child was blessed with a child. And that's the Maisa. That's the Maisa. Rav Reichman had an understanding of the Maisa, which is that Rav Wolfson, the Mashkiach, spoke so much about Shevet Dan, the lowest of all Shvatim, our generation, who are kicked out of the cloud, Polte Ha'anan, chased by Amalek, terrified of Amalek, Hanechashalim Acharecha. But it's specifically from within that place that Lishuascha Kivisi Hashem comes from. The Nasi of Shevet Dan. Shimshon Agibor, Keneged the Plishtim. Shimshon Agibor, Baruch Hashemesh, the strength, the Arieliyut of Klal Yisrael, the force and the lion and the destruction of the enemies of Klal Yisrael, the light of Shimshon. And in that place, what's the light of Shimshon? Lishuascha Kivisi Hashem. Lishuascha Kivisi Hashem. That's it. Lishuascha Kivisi Hashem, to be mamshich the kav, to be mamshich the kav down into exile, to reveal that Hashem is here also. And I want to end just with drush be'inyan hakivoy. I'm not even going to I don't know, I'll say I won't translate and then I'll translate probably. So this drush hakivoy from Rabbeinu Haramchal is so potent, and it describes exactly this need of what we're trying to drag from Bina into Chachma. Because Kaveh el Hashem yachlifu koyach v'kaveh el Hashem. And on the Balatanya's deathbed, he asked for a cup of coffee. Why? Because Kaveh kavisi el Hashem. The only thing to do at the end is to hope for more, to draw down more of the Kav. And so Zakt Rabbeinu Haramchal, Liyeshuascha kivisi, Reishis habriya betikva. The beginning of creation took place by way of hope. Shekol hatachtonim mitzapim l'shifas Eloinim al yedei tefila oshir. That everything that exists below is yearning and davening towards something to be revealed from above by way of tefillah. Pasuk says, Bereishis bar Elokim, ein reishis ela tikva. Nothing begins without hope. There's no beginning other than hope. Ein hatzimtzum asui ki'im l'tzapoy sheyechanes kav orin sofbo. The only reason Hashem was mitzamtzim himself was so that the kav, which is melashon kivoy, would come back down into it. V'zeh kav melashon kivoy v'tshuka. Bo ure'eh. Kol habrios nivru below shleimus. Everything is created imperfect. Chisaron, bina. Shenemar asher bara Eloikim lasos. The 6 days of creation, like we said. Sheya'asu achar kach b'hamshacham hashafa l'shleimusam. That we ourselves should be mashlim ourselves. Oy b'masim toivim, oy b'tfila, oy b'shir. Hashchina yatsa mitchila bilti mushlemes. Hashchina yatsa betchila bilti mushlemes. V'zeh bereishis bara Eloikim. Eloikim daika, din. Chisaron, absence. Bina. Reishis chachma yiras Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is yira. Yira implies distance from something, deficiency. Ein yira ele mipnei shemisha tzarich lo. Yira means I need something. I'm afraid because I'm deficient. But someone who doesn't need anything doesn't have any fear. In a Yearning, Reishis Chachmas HaMatzil Baruch Hu La'asais Hayira Shu Atikva Le'elyonim. The way Hashem created the world was deficiency so that we would yearn to that which is above. V'zeh Hashem Hu Elikim. That the Bina and the Chachma, the Tzimtzum and the Giloi, they're all the same. Galus and Geula, we have to drag Galus into Geula. Ki HaKoil Echad, everything is one. But Hashem wanted to reveal the deficiency first so that we can have the kinos and then transform them into tikkun. Hadeshayim amdu al pesach hakarka v'lo ad she'espala l'leim adam harishon. Halavanim mekabelas min hashemesh. Emes me'eretz titzmach v'tzedek mishamayim nishkaf. That the shefa from above comes from above down below specifically. And it's specifically down below that we have the ability to draw it down. Sha'ashefa nishkaf me'lamala umamtin letikva shetitzmach me'lamat min haaretz. That the shefa is ready to come down, chachma is always there, and it's waiting for bina to be mishtoikik for it to come down. Tikvas emes shu abitachon shel emes sheboitchim bahashgacha. This lashon, what's tikvas emes? True hope, shu abitachon shel emes sheboitchim bahashgacha. That we believe it's not choy katov lehetiv. There's hashgacha, but it's toiv hanir v'anigla. Mamish begoy einayim will see it. V'chol shar betchoinos be'eshtadlus heim betchoinos shel sheker. Ubitachon ba'Hashem ubitachon emes shene'emar v'yadata ki ani Hashem asher lo yoveshu koivai.
Repeat the previous thing with sheker.
Bitachon, so he says over here, v'chol shar betchoinos be'eshtadlus heim betchoinos shel sheker. Ubitachon ba'Hashem ubitachon emes shene'emar v'yadata ki ani Hashem lo yevoshu koivai. Meaning to say, it's a haftacha. If you hope for me, you will not be left empty-handed. And if you're still empty-handed, it means that you're still in a stage of hope. Lo ish el v'yichsav. Hashem said it. He's not going to lie. He's not a person that lies. V'im yitmamea chakelo. V'im eino ba'olam hazehu la'olam haba. Li'olam haba. It doesn't mean the next world. Li'olam haba is chay olam haba, to bring it down into our lives now. Tikvas aniyim te'avad la'ad. Ze'i efshar. It's impossible that hope should be empty-handed in the end. If it's empty-handed, it just means that the hope has not come out yet. V'zeh liyeshuascha kivisi Hashem. L'zeh Hashem havaya shu reishis hakol. I'm yearning not to anything but Hashem, Shem havaya. The osios of Shem havaya that are lamala from osios. The notion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'chvoido yiva'atzmo, Chachma itself coming down to be Megala itself, the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzarech shetiya atikva, we have to yearn directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing else. V'lo l'shem kinoi, and not to some other name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kol mekavet tfilaso oile b'li emtzai. B'li emtzai. Lo al yidei malach, no malachim. Malachim don't understand hope. Because hope, why? It has to come from a place of a sense of hopelessness, or a reason to be hopeless. Ein shum yesh ba'olam klal is the radical secret of what is being discussed here. That even when it seems that yesh is a reason, a possibility, ein shum yesh ba'olam klal. Even if chas v'shalom you've been over the isser of asur lehit yesh, and you did lose hope, what will be revealed there in that place of having felt you lost hope is ein shum yesh ba'olam klal. That hopelessness doesn't even actually exist. Ella liyeshuascha daika, to your salvation, Hashem. K'moshe medaber lenoichach. As if I'm talking directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the secret of Hisboidedus and the secret of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah. Lo al yedei shliach, ki yukav boikeya v'noikev v'oile ad Hashem mamish. Chavru, we have time to go weiter in the tefillah? 2 more minutes of it? Yeah. Hakivoi husoid hishpashtus. By way of hoping, I'm actually drawing something down. It's the way that things get drawn down. Hope is an active principle. It's not just hoping towards something that is not present, but hope itself, by way of Kedusha, is the way that I actually draw closer that thing that I desire. Even if it's not ready for it to be revealed, I develop a relationship to it by way of hope. It's no longer something that doesn't exist in my life. It exists by way of hope. Kav hamispashet, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's coming further down into existence. Masha'en kein igul hu davar patuach michol tzad. A circle, chachma, everything is equal over there. V'zeh liyeshuascha kivoy, la'asais kavim. I want kavim. I want there to be particular things that I want to hope for. Hashem, bizman shia Hashem shalim. Hamekave tamid besimcha b'litzar. Hamekave tamid besimcha b'litzar. Ki hamitzta'er tamid hu biyagon va'anacha v'choyshev she'en lo trufa. Someone who has hope will be in a state of perpetual joy without pain. Now, it obviously doesn't mean physical pain, right? It obviously doesn't mean the conditions of human experience that are unavoidable to one degree or another within the reality of being a Baal Bechira. But what it means is the moichin. The moichin of tikva will eliminate the element of pain that is by choice in my mind. Why? And he says something obviously, but the Ramchal says something. The Ramchal gave us Mesil Shisharim. Hamitzta'er tamid, what is the suffering that a person experiences? Is perpetually in a state of yagon and anacha. Why? Shechoyshev she'en lo trufa. They assume that there's no cure. There's a hopelessness. Aval mekave enu mitzta'er ki hu mekave tamid. For the hopeful person, there's always something to do. There's always a trufa available. There's medicine always available. It's yearning for you, Hashem. That's the medicine. Ki hu mekave tamid. Va'afilu im yatma'ameya mechake. Nimsa hatikva mechaya oso. Umisha eno mekave miyad meis. V'nishar rachok me Hashem. V'ne'emanash al she'eno mekave la Hashem. A person is punished for what? For not hoping. That's in a person's bechira. That's in a person's bechira. Whatever happens in reality, that's what happens in reality. But I have the ability to hope perpetually. Umishu mekave ne'emar, and someone who hopes towards Hashem, Gam ki eshev b'choyshech Hashem orli, Hashem daika. Gam ki eshev b'choyshech Hashem orli. Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. Hamekave afal pi sheyesh le ma'at ma'asim toivim, lo yevosh. Shenemar v'yadata ki ani Hashem asher lo yoveshu kovai. I don't care, you have hope. I made a promise. If you hope, you'll have everything. V'zeh ki yesh l'dal tikva. An impoverished person with nothing has hope. Umishu hu dal mi ma'asim tovim yesh lo tikva. And a person who's aware of their inequity and their unwholeness, specifically a person like that, knows the necessity of hope. Ki Hashem mitgala alav u'ma'avir kol pshayim. Through hope, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets rid of everything. V'zeh sof hatikun. This is the end of the rectification. This is how the rectification happens at the end. Migodel tikvas kol Yisrael ba'oirech hagalus u'boitchim be'amuna sheyigalenu. V'soif hatikva umashti as avon haaretz. V'zeh liyishuascha kivisi. Ki zehu kavod hamelech sheboitchim bo. The honor of the king is that we trust him. Bo Chabakuk v'hemir al achas emuna, tikva. Hamekave afilu nichnas begehenim yoytzim imenu. Shne'emar v'koyve Hashem yachlifu koyach ya'alu ever. Hashem meir elav, in Gehenim itself. V'kama melochim elyonim malin oisay hamekave v'zehu ever k'nesharim. Mi yitain li ever kayoinu, mistalkin imoy lamala v'tikvaso hu ta'araso. V'tikvaso hu ta'araso. Tikvaso hu ta'araso. That's why mikvah, tikva, mikvah Yisrael mamish. Ki b'madrega elyoina she'eno osa boy pagam. Doesn't matter. Gam ki ilach beget samavis lo yirara ki ati madi. I'm connected to hope. Im chotas ma tifal. My behaviors mean nothing. I have hope towards you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'zeu sod hatshuva shu mamish shavel makoro. V'asitra achra lo yochla lo. We escape. We run away. Tikva is an escape route from the Yetzer and from responsibility of it. V'nemar shuva Yisrael ad Hashem. Ki hamakav hu mamish boikeya bekav tikvaso. We create new openings in Gehenim itself. There's a Pesach to Gehenim, we know. But the secret of hope, and in Gehenim there's always hope. Rabbeinu said, Rabbeinu sha'ag b'kol gadol, for those of us in Gehenim to hear it. That's why you have to scream so loud. That ein shum yesh b'olam klal, koilel Gehenim. Which means that when it says that Rabbi Nachman will take a person, I heard this from my friend Shui, that when a person hears that Rabbi Nachman is going to pull us out of Gehenim, it doesn't just mean in the future, it means right now. Because in Gehenim there's always, you can have hope. Why? Because when you have hope, you create new openings. You've created your own route directly underneath the throne of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'zeh liyishuascha kivisi Hashem. V'zeh yachal Yisrael el Hashem ki yem Hashem ha-chesed. B'mokom shem mizgala shem havaya mizgala ha-chesed. Chesed lamata me'asar tvachim. V'ein pegam ma'akev. It doesn't matter where we're holding. We have tikva. Kamoishe kivu b'chayav la-Hashem. Just as we hope towards Hashem now. Kein la'acher moisoi k'shemiskabrim kenegdo hadinim. Hu mitchazik b'tikvasoi ad Hashem v'nikshar bo. I'll be able to rely on the hope that I had towards Hashem. If I have no maisim, I'll say, Hashem, at least I hoped towards you. Umistalik v'rega. V'zeh lishuascha kivisi, eino omer lishuascha ekaveh. It's not a future orientation. Ela kivisi, b'chayai, right now. Kach achar maves leveshu akavim. B'zman shatzadikim b'tzara. B'zman shatzadikim b'tzara ne'emar imoy anoichi b'tzara kavyachol. U'b'koyach hatikva yotzim in hatzara. Hu v'kavyachol yotzei imo. We reveal Hashem from that place also. K'moy shenemar b'mitzrayim yotzu kol tzvos Hashem im hashchina. V'zeh liyishuascha kivisi liyishuascha mamish yishuas Hashem shahaya imo b'tzara kivisi Hashem liyishuaso. Bo ure'ei hatzadikim ma'alim tfiloseim la'aznei hamelech shenemar v'yitpalel el Hashem v'yitzak el Hashem. That nukud of Moshe in each and every one of us. And the tzadikim amitim. Bizman sheyesh harbim mekatragim heim mafsikim u'ma'akvim hatfila me'la'alos. Shenemar boi sukoso ba'anan locha me'bavor tfila. There's no place for the tefillah to go. Aval b'tzadikim ha'mekavim v'oisim nitziv u'bekia b'toicha anonim. But the tzadikim who create pathways within the clouds, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kavyachol yorid lishmoya tfilaso mipiv shel ha'mekaveh. Soid zeh kaveh kivisi Hashem v'yot alai v'yishma sha'avasi. V'zeh liyishuascha kivisi. Ma sha'ani mekaveh, ani oise shetavo yishuascha b'shem hazeh. My hope itself is what brings out the redemption. Without it getting stuck. When the Ramchal wrote 515 tefillos, which is the Gematria V'Yaschanan, every single one of these tefillos ends with Li Yishuascha Kivisi Hashem. And so the avodah is to bring the kivoy, which is Bina, into the Yeshua of Hashem, which is Chachma, to be Zocha to the lights of Keser, to be Mahapech Kares into Keser, to transform the Kinos into a place of Tikkun, and to celebrate like the Shpaler Zayda wanted to celebrate Tisha B'Av by saying, nobody's got to do this. He told them to get drunk on Erev Tisha B'Av ultimately, in the Bechina of Purim, and then he came into an empty shul for Kinos and he said, I told you Hashem, the Jewish people are not going to do tshuva the way you want them to do tshuva prior to the coming of Mashiach. He said, I swear to you on my beard. And he demanded from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring redemption now, Be'ezras Hashem. Okay. Shkoyach.